day. How you going? What do you know? We'll strike a light. Today, good day. And how you going? Just say good day, good day, good day, and you'll be right.
Well, g'day and welcome to Australian English with Jason. I wanted to start this by talking about my daily routine. That means the things that I do every day. At 6:30 in the morning, I wake up. Then at 6:35 in the morning, we say AM for the morning. After noon, we say PM. So it's 6:35 in the morning. I have breakfast. We very rarely use the word eat in English. We say have breakfast. We say have a drink. We really don't use eat or drink very often as verbs. Then at 6:55 AM, I have a shower. Then at 7 AM, I leave for work. I leave to come to this classroom. At 8:30 AM, after travelling for 1.5 hours to get to the classroom, I record this video. At 8:50 AM, the video is finished. 20 minutes is long enough for a lesson, don't you think? So I go to the cafe. At 9 AM, I start coming home. At 10:30 AM, I do some gardening. At 12:30 PM, I have lunch. At 1 PM, or of course we can just say at 1 o'clock, or at 1, I like to learn line dancing. At 4:30, I go to the cinema. I catch a movie. We can say I see a movie, but catch a movie is an interesting colloquial way to say the same thing. At 6, I meet my family. At 6:30, we have tea. Please don't call it dinner in Australia. If you're worried about confusing it with this, we call this have a cup of tea. But the evening meal is called have tea. At 7:30, we play cards together. And at 9:30, I go to bed. But I've given you a fairly boring way of talking about my routine, haven't I? Just saying all of these things one after the other. Let's look at how we can use conjunctions to talk about the different things happening in relationship to each other. The conjunctions of time, which we use to say that something happens later, are after, once, and since. To say that something happens at the same time, we use the conjunctions as, whenever, while, and whilst. To say that something happens earlier, we use before and until. First, we will learn the word after. After I learn line dancing, I'll catch a movie. The word after is just a general word for something that happens next. After can be followed by a subject, I, verb, learn, and an optional object, line dancing. But after can also be followed by a participle, a present participle. That means the verb ending in ing. After learning line dancing, I'll catch a movie. It is always assumed that the subject has to be the same as the subject of the other half of the sentence. I am the one learning line dancing. We can put this backwards. I'll catch a movie after I learn line dancing. Or of course we could say, I'll catch a movie after learning line dancing. When I wrote it, starting with the word after, there was a comma in the middle of the sentence. If it's not a conjunction, it's a comma. I'll catch a movie after I learn line dancing. Put a little pause. Not as long a pause as you would for a full stop, but a little pause after the comma. I'll catch a movie after I learn line dancing. I didn't pause in the second sentence, did I? Now, when we put after in the middle of the word, in the middle of the sentence, we've slightly changed the meaning. It doesn't have to be straight after. It doesn't have to be straight away. So now it's just saying that two things happen at different times. So we could also say, I'll learn line dancing after I finish the video. So when it starts with after, it means straight away. One thing stops, the next starts. But when it's after in the middle of the sentence, there could be some time between one thing finishing and the next thing starting. You would hardly have breakfast and then immediately have tea. I'll have tea after I have breakfast. That's a perfectly reasonable sentence. But you would never say, after I have breakfast, I'll have tea. What type of verb is I have? It's present simple. The verb straight after the conjunction will always be present. And usually it will be simple. Let's go on to the next conjunction of time. Once I meet my family, we'll have tea together. This one does suggest straight away. You cannot use a present participle here. It has to be subject and verb. Don't try to say once meeting my family. Once I meet my family, we'll have tea together. Says that having tea is a family event. You couldn't have tea without your family. We'll have tea together once I meet my family. We'll have tea together once I meet my family. No comma and no pause in the middle of the sentence. So it's once I meet my family, we'll have tea together. Did you hear the pause? We'll have tea together once I meet my family. The next conjunction of time is since. I've been making this video since I arrived in the classroom. I came into the classroom and that's when I started making this video. So since is telling me that there was one sharp, quick action that happened to start another much longer action happening. We can reverse this sentence, but it has quite a different meaning if we do. Since I've arrived in this classroom, I've been making this video. Now the sentence starts with since. And everything else is the same. Is that right? Now it's right. We needed to add that comma. Since I've arrived in the classroom, I've been making this video. That has quite a different meaning. That means I didn't intend to make this video. I came here for a different reason. I was at home and I thought, where's my duster? This that I used to rub things out on the board. I didn't have it at home. So I thought, it's in the classroom. And it takes 1.5 hours to get from home to the classroom. And I thought 1.5 hours is a long time just to go and get a rubber, an eraser. So And when I got here, I saw the whiteboard, I saw the camera, I saw everything set up. So I thought, since I've arrived in the classroom, why don't I make a video? Now let's talk about how to say that two things happen at the same time. As I have tea, I'll chat with my family. Two things happening at the same time: having tea and chatting. We can swap that around and take the comma out and say, I'll have tea as I chat with my family. Notice that the verbs have changed. Now it's I will have or I shall have tea, future, and I chat. Before I said I'll chat. This is a one-off event. We're talking about a special event that's happening at 6:30 tonight. But if we want to talk about things that always happen together, we use whenever. Whenever I go to the cafe, I have a flat white. A flat white means a coffee with milk. Whenever I go to the cafe, I have a flat white. This is a regular rule. Two things always happen together. Sometimes I might have a biscuit, sometimes I might have a piece of cake, sometimes I don't eat anything. But I always have a flat white. Think for yourself about how we would say that the other way round. While I travel to the classroom, I think about what to teach. While can be followed here by a subject and a verb. It can also be followed by a present participle, the ing. So while travelling to the classroom, I think about what to teach. And notice that travelling has a double L. We can also say either of those sentences in reverse. Think about how you would do that and whether or not you would use a comma. But there is a similar word, whilst. Whilst travelling to the classroom, I think about what to teach. Whilst can only be followed by a present participle, not by a subject and a verb. So you cannot say, whilst I travel. Another point to remember is that the subject of the present participle, although we never say it, has to be the same as the subject of the other half of the sentence. So suppose I said this: whilst travelling, or I could say while travelling to the classroom, my friend rang me. What's wrong with that? That's saying my friend was travelling to the classroom, not me. Before I have a shower, I have breakfast. As soon as I finish breakfast, I start having the shower. But when I change the order of the sentence, it means something different. I have breakfast before I leave for the classroom. There is a little time. Something else happens between leaving for the classroom and having breakfast. So if before is in the middle of the sentence, it just means something happens a bit later. But if before is at the start of the sentence, it means something happens straight away. We play cards until I go to bed. This one, we have to say in that order. You can't say, until I go to bed, we play cards. We just can't say it that way. This has the sense of one long thing that keeps happening until something stops it. One long thing, we play cards for a long time, and then one thing says, we're not doing that anymore. Stops now. If you're following me on Facebook, this hopefully useful little diagram that I made will be in the Australian English with Jason on Facebook. While you're on Facebook, why don't you also check out Expert English Language Training? There you will find lots of helpful little quizzes to help you with English. You'll find some of them very useful. You'll find them a bit of fun. Just try to answer these two questions. Which conjunctions of time can be followed by present participles, that is, the verbs ending in ing? And when does a sentence with a conjunction of time need a comma? Think about your answers. If you need more time, pause the video now. The conjunctions of time which can be followed by a present participle are after, while, whilst, and before. In fact, whilst can only be followed by a present participle. When does a sentence with a conjunction of time need a comma? When the conjunction of time is the first word of the sentence. please use the comments below to either talk about my routine or even better, talk about your routine using some conjunctions of time. Thank you for watching. Hooroo.